It is March the 23rd, which, if you don't know, is a Saturday, and it's 9 o'clock. Yes! It's time for the Monster Magic Saturday Show. Let's do this.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning. Feel the sun shining for your eyes.
Woo-hoo-hoo! Good morning. Yes, spring is almost here. I do have to apologise for last week. I know there was a lot of noise as Colin, my boat, was jiggling up and down. It's still moving a little bit, but hopefully it's not quite so loud. I also have to apologise for not mentioning Hawk 2.0 by Alexander Collar, not sure how to pronounce it, when talking about On the Rise by Kashan Wallace. The method is very similar, and I would say On the Rise is very much a modern day improvement. The Hawk came out in 2010, and because of the similarities in the method and the gimmick, I am pretty certain that On the Rise was very much influenced by Alexander's release, and really there should be a lot of credit going to Alexander for coming up with such a clever idea in the first place. I'm not sure if the Hawk is actually still available, or indeed if Alexander was contacted by Keshan when he decided to release it. I think it's a bit strange that he hasn't been given any credit in the write-up for the product, so I shall correct that on my website as soon as possible. But now for this week's reviews, and first up we have Bangarang by Nicholas Lawrence. This came out a few weeks ago, actually, and has been a really good seller. People are loving it. It is a very clever little gimmick. The effect is that you show two jokers with holes in the middle cleanly, both sides, and then in between them appears a Queen of Hearts, and you can make the Queen of Hearts then vanish again and reappear wherever you like. The idea of having a card reappear between cards with holes in isn't new to Nicholas, but this has added a little something which makes the displays a little bit better. And actually the gimmick is indeed specially printed and all handmade, apparently. Let me just show you what you get. You get an instruction card, which I'm not going to show you. You get a neat little envelope, which you might want to use for your effect. It's up to you, but it's got the name of the trick on it, so probably wouldn't recommend it. And you get a specially printed Queen gimmick, which I can't show you too much about because that would give the game away. And you get these two jokers. Now, these jokers have been specially printed as well. They're not bicycle, although they look like they should be bicycle. They've got the rider back on it. The finish is different, and the Pantone of the red is different. So they don't completely match up to your standard bicycle deck. That's not an issue at all, because they rarely go that close to your deck. So I don't know why they haven't used just ordinary bicycle jokers. I'm not sure why that is, but they've got a slightly different, smoother finish to them as well, so they haven't got that air cushioned linen finish that you'd expect, but they look perfectly fine. And also the Queen Pantone doesn't exactly match your bicycle deck either. Now, none of these are issues, I'm just pointing it out because some people might notice it and might worry about it, and to be honest, no spectator is ever going to know. The tutorial is by Nicholas himself, and he runs through everything you need to know in a very nice, laid back and clear manner. He starts off by talking about how to sort of wear in the gimmick to make sure everything will work just so, and that's very quick and easy to do. He also shows how to store it and everything else, and then he runs through the handling of the appearance and the vanish of the card between the two jokers. He runs through the displays, how to cleanly display them, a few subtleties, and then with the vanish and the appearance, he goes through some variations on how to do it, whether you want to spring the cards or just drop the cards. It's up to you. None are difficult at all, and all look pretty amazing. Angle-wise, this is pretty solid. There's just sort of one moment, perhaps, with the display of the jokers that you might want to be careful, but you can shield that really well. And what is so nice is that it's not just the, visual appearance between these two cards, but you also get a nice full routine of having a card selected, the Queen of Hearts, surprisingly enough, have it lost in the deck, and then have it appear between these two jokers, then vanish from these two jokers and appear face up back in the deck. It can't be signed, obviously, but it's a really, really nice full routine with some great visual magic thanks to this little gimmick. Now, these jokers can be examined, but there is a gimmick. Obviously, the Queen that appears between these cannot. So what you need to do is a little bit of a cleanup, which Nicholas teaches. It's not difficult cleanup to do, and there is some motivation that he gives as well. And also, when the card reappears back in the center of the deck, that is a perfect timing for which to do it. There's a little section on the tutorial as well where Nicholas runs through various other ideas and sort of alters the gimmicks slightly, just to give you some ideas. Up to you if you want to run with those or not, but it does show his creativity and hopefully will inspire you to be quite creative with this as well. And of course, there's a section, because these are ungimmicked in any way, you can actually take the jokers or any other card that you want. If you've got a different plot that you want to explore, you can take any card and just punch some holes in the center. Nicholas helps you with how to do that, and he also tells you how to repair the Queen gimmick should you need to. All very, very simple stuff. You can simply carry around these gimmicks in a separate envelope or a separate wallet if you like, and just bring them out at any point during your card set and do this trick and really add some wonderful visuals to your card magic. It's easy to do, and I've found it a lot of fun to play with. That is Bangarang by Nicholas Lawrence, $29.99. Next up, we've got Key Motion by Seth Race. This is a new take on the haunted key / voodoo doll effect. You show that you've got this small key and you place it on the palm of your hand, and you ask people to imagine the key standing up or turning, and the key will begin to rise up and then give a little turn before falling back down, all through the power of their mind. It's a nice modern day version of the combined plots of Haunted Key Voodoo Doll. Haunted Key, I think, is probably credited to Nate Leipzig back in 1935, and the Voodoo Doll, I'm not sure who first came up with that with the doll. I remember Charlie Miller back in the early 70s had a great trick with a pencil, and you have two people holding an imaginary piece of string and the pencil would bounce along that string. I really loved that trick, and that got me into actually learning the method behind the Voodoo Doll back when I started in magic. And the method has been used on various objects over the years. The Voodoo Doll is quite an obvious one because of the voodoo and the telekinesis and so on. It sort of makes sense, but I know it's been done with water bottles and pencils, as I know Charlie Miller did. It's done with a key. The method is very similar. If you're not familiar with the method, you might be a bit shocked at first when you receive it. And from me, when I was learning it, it was all done really with written instructions, and it was quite a painful learning experience. But what is so good about this method, despite the trial and error that you'll have to go through, you'll really love the method because there's no threads, there's no magnets, it can be performed completely surrounded. There's nothing really for anybody to see. The key itself that you receive is very lightweight, and that is probably what people are going to notice first of all. They might see the method. I wouldn't actually hand this out for examination. Dan Harlan, who does the tutorial for this, just says, you can find similar keys to this, and you can just in the UK, pop into Timpson's, and you can just walk around their rack and find a key that's similar, because if you're going to be switching it, so the keys are never going to be examined together by the audience. And as far as they're concerned, it is a small silver key. It's uncut as well. You could get it cut if you wanted. I've found, generally speaking, that a lot of people don't really notice whether it's cut or not. It's not something, I don't know why, but certainly with things such as Keymaster and so on and Gatekeeper, no one's ever mentioned that they're uncut. Dan gives some presentation ideas as to why it's not cut as well, which is quite nice. I'm not a big fan of Dan's presentation per se. When the key is rising, he does a lot of sort of finger motion from the participants, which I don't particularly like. I'd rather it was pure thinking of it rising and getting them to think stronger. I think the finger motion and everything else is a little bit excessive. But Dan's teaching on this is great. It is really, really thorough. Lots of close-ups of exactly where to find the sweet spot on your hands to minimize the time you spend struggling with it. And once you've found it, you'll always find it, and it will cease to be an issue at all. He talks about angles as well and how to make sure everything's correct, but there are really no angle issues with this, and there's no real setup either, which is so nice. One of the best bits was Dan, almost as a bonus, showed how to do this on the table with a handkerchief under a glass, which is something I'd never seen before. It's really clever and amazing, and also painless. So, it's an easy trick to do. You've just got to go through a little period of learning that you might find slightly unpleasant, but it is well worth it, believe me. I did it with a Charlie Miller pencil, which was a lot heavier than this, so you can think yourself lucky. Dan gives the presentation of someone unlocking something in their mind, or a deep thought, or a challenge, which is nice if you want to go down that route. Not really for me, though. There's also a nice section where Dan explains how to switch in a duplicate key if you've got one, and also how to ditch this key, which is, because by its very nature and by the method of the trick, is surprisingly easy, and you don't need to go to your pocket. And also, he points out that there are tricks that you can do with this other than the haunted key, because there's a well-known coin gimmick that's similar. So you can sort of research that coin gimmick if you want and come up with ideas for this key. And when money is slowly dying out, as our society becomes more and more cashless, keys are still around, and so that makes a lot of sense. It makes it a very, very versatile gimmick. I definitely recommend getting the closer duplicate to this key, because you do want to hand it out at the start. You do want people to know that it's normal and legit before you do anything like the voodoo doll. And also, you might come up with a little preamble routine, based on some coin magic that uses this style gimmick, and that'll be a nice little lead in to the main effect. This brings the voodoo doll bang up to date, gives you some good plot and presentation ideas, and makes it a logical everyday carry. This is Key Motion by Seth Race, 1999. Next up, we've got Chroma by Marc Lemon. This is a take on the Stroop test. You ask your participant to think of any colour, and then you introduce a Stroop test card, which has various colours written on it in different colours to the actual word. You ask them several times to find their colour written in different colours, and then you are able to divine which colour they have been thinking of. It's the Stroop test. The Stroop test has been used in Magic quite a lot recently. It's actually a genuine test created by J.R. Stroop in 1935, although apparently some German people may have published it before that. And the idea is that you have the colours written down in words, but in a different colour to what they say. So yellow would be written in blue ink, for example. And finding the words and saying the words just tests your mental cognitive skills in some way. And what Marc has done is taken the Stroop test and combined it with an old mathematical principle. I'm guessing dates back to the 30s. I haven't quite found out who first came up with this principle and used it in Magic, but it is very old. It's very easy to do, but it does take a little bit of mental arithmetic, but not hard mental arithmetic. And the more you practice with this principle, the faster you'll get. It's no harder than when you first got your invisible deck. And what is really nice is, traditionally with this principle, you'd have to ask a lot of questions, but because of the design of the prop, you don't have to. You just simply ask them to keep finding their colour, which does make the method even more deceptive. Now this, let me show you the prop. So the prop is, look at this. Oh, it's in here. This has got to be, I'm guessing, the Packaging of the Month award goes to Chroma. you get this card. This is the card. It's a plastic card. It's strong. You can use it to scrape the ice off your windscreen if you must, and it will fit into your card. And it is a brilliant, brilliant thing to just fit into your wallet. It will take a lot of wear and tear, and that's it. And it's just got the colours written on in different coloured ink. The idea of using a card like this with this method is not unique to Marc at all. It's first by Paul Canazzo, I believe, with a trick called Dreamweaver. But Marc has taken that, and this is a much more logical thing to carry in a way, and I think it works perfectly. But certainly Paul Canazzo does take some credit, because this is a very, very smart idea. And like I say, removes the need for questions, which is the downfall of the principle, and really allows for a very streamlined presentation. And the presentation with the Stroop test is great fun. Marc suggests that you get your phone out and you time them finding their colour several times, and from that you can do either a cheeky reveal as you go, well, it normally takes an intelligent person 5 seconds, but it's taken you 37 seconds to find whatever, and reveal their colour that way. That's a lot of fun, and I think that's how I would play with it. I would do a straightforward colour reveal based on how long it took them to find whatever colour they were thinking of. I'm not a mentalist, and so it wouldn't make much sense to me to try and reveal it in any other way. I do think the Stroop test is a really, really good hook, and the big question for most people, especially when it involves a mathematical principle that's sort of quite logical, perhaps you might think it's transparent as to how the trick is done. So the big question is it fooling? And I think it is. I think especially if you introduce this card, if you give a little bit of history and you treat it as a bit of a game as to how fast they can find their colour, I think it's quite subtle how you can do it. You know, it will not feel like a puzzle with the right presentation, and will actually become a very entertaining and baffling little mentalism routine. This card also functions as a crib as well, so you don't need to do any memory work if that's a worry. The only other slight concern is if your participant thinks of a colour that isn't actually on this card. That's very unlikely. I agree with Marc. He says it's never happened to him, and I kind of understand why, unless you've got someone who is being particularly difficult. But also, you know, if they choose a colour, you know, like turquoise or something else, there's a colour that is close to that on here. And that's the main effect and presentation. But there's a second video where Marc goes through some slightly more advanced mentalism ideas for the reveal, where instead of just saying the colour that they're thinking of, perhaps if they can turn it into an image or perhaps a memory. And Marc quotes Peter Turner's Bob principle for that, which is very clever, and probably well worth learning if you are interested in mentalism. Again, it's not a route that I would go down, but it's nice to be fed these channels for which you can improve your knowledge and become better at your mentalism, and make this into something much, much stronger perhaps. And what I would describe as slightly less mentalism heavy, Marc runs through a couple of ideas using the one ahead principle, which is a really, really smart use for this as well. And the final chapter, Marc talks about a little iOS shortcut he's created, which will help you divine the colour without having to do any maths or any memory work at all. And that's really nice and very easy. Throughout the tutorial, Marc really does teach it so clearly. He really takes his time, and it starts off with him running through examples and getting you to work out along with him, so you really do know exactly how to use it, and he gives some great tips. For me, this is a really fun everyday carry for a little bit of whimsy mentalism based on the Stroop test that I can, you know, really hang a good plot and presentation on. And I love Marc's idea for the humour of slightly taking the mick out of your mates about how slow they are to find their colour. But it's very interesting because obviously the second chapter, you can do some really, really strong mentalism effects and drawing duplications and other uses for it. So you can take it as far as you like. It is very easy to do right out of the box, but the best thing is the more you do it, the easier it will get until it's almost second nature. It is Chroma by Marc Lemon, 2099. And now we've got Perro Verde by Mario Lopez. This is FISM winner Mario Lopez's take on Roy Welton's Card Warp back from 1974. Variations on Card Warp seem to be popping up quite a lot ever since Warp Zag by Joel Dickinson. This sticks quite closely to the traditional Card Warp plot, where you fold two cards in half, a red card and a blue card. You push the red card through the blue and it turns over, so it's now face out on one side. You then push it back and then you can repeat it, push it through again and it turns into a blue backed card. You then push it through again and it turns into a green backed card, and then that green backed card at the end turns back to red. This is really clever thinking by Mario to get more phases out of Card Warp. It's really clean and the gimmicks do pretty much all of it for you. You've just got to learn the handling, which Mario runs through really, really cleanly. And despite English not being his first language, the explanation is very, very good. Let me just show you what you get. So you get... So you actually receive 3 cards. They are Phoenix backed cards, and that's really nice because it enables you to do a cleanup. So one of these cards is pretty heavily gimmicked. So at the end, if you do want to hand them out, Mario does teach ways of ending clean, but that will require a little bit of sleight of hand. But the main effect requires no sleight of hand at all. Because of the nature of the gimmick, there are angle issues from behind, so it's not quite as clean as the original Card Warp, but you do get a few of those extra phases which are really, really eye-popping. When that green appears, that is a real surprising moment and will hit your audience between the eyes. It's something they just won't see coming. It is great. With the original Card Warp, you have to rip the cards up at the end to end clean. You don't want to do that with these because you'll be destroying a specially printed gimmick. So you will have to figure out a way of doing that switch if you want them examined at the end. You could also probably switch it in at the start. That might be vaguely easier, and perhaps will eliminate anyone thinking that the cards are gimmicked right from the start. So that's something to explore. If you don't want to do any sleight of hand, then I'm guessing there are some Himba products out there, Himba envelopes or Himba wallets that will do a switch for you if that's something that you're particularly concerned about. But effect-wise, it is really, really good and perfect for social media as well, I imagine. Different plots and presentations for Card Warp have been discussed a lot. Mike Close does his Doctor Strangelove, which is a great little presentation, or you can have, going through some sort of time warp, some hole in space, whatever you like. Just have some fun with it. But I think it is easy to do, simple, eye-popping magic. It is Perro Verde by Mario Lopez, $23.99. And finally, we have Evolutionary by Marc Woods and Green Lemon. This is a book test based on pictures, the evolution of logos. The method, I must say, is invented by Steve Young with his visionary cards quite a long time ago now. And the first person to put it into book form rather than card form was none other than John Morton, who did it with his baby book, with which he fooled Penn and Teller. If you want visionary cards, then Steve Young does have a website called thoughtillusion.com. And if you want the baby book, you can buy it from Monster, or you can get it from John himself, johnmorton.com. And the baby book came out around 2016, I believe. And this sort of brings it into the baby book is obviously a book with children's pictures. This brings it in more into the adult world. And actually the design of this book is terrific. It really does look like a genuine sort of gift book. One of those books you'd have at the counter of your bookshop. And not only does it have all of the logos, but spotted throughout, it has these little nice facts, the 1980s and logos, which really makes this thing incredibly genuine. It's got the barcode, it's got a little blumph on the back. It looks 100% like a real book on the evolution of logos. And what you have is essentially a group of logos on one side from lots of different companies based in the same period, and then you have one product over here, and you ask your participant to read out some of these plus one of those, and you can define this one here. You can also after that do the primary color of it, so it's got the hex code of the color that's used in that logo if you want to do a little second phase, a little bit of added extra there. And obviously these logos here, they are repeated on other pages as well, so it's not that obvious. And they can read out any number of these in any order and you still know. So you have various ways of building the routine. You can have them read them in order first, then read them out of order, then read just 3, for example. So it builds and essentially makes it harder. And they can keep choosing different pages throughout. The method by Steve Young, as I say, is absolutely genius. It is so well hidden. It is incredible. And it's so easy to do. With a lot of book tests, you have memory work, you have cribs and so on. With this, it's like the baby book. In the space of a couple of minutes, you've just got to tell someone the secret and they will be able to do it, even if they haven't seen the book before. And the size makes it a much easier carry than most other book tests. How you do the reveal, how much presentation you put on it is entirely up to you, whether you start finding the colors in the logo or whether you start getting waves, whether you know which decade it's from. That's entirely up to you. You put your own presentation on this and just come up with a routine that builds nicely. Like I say, you can use the hex numbers to define the color used in the logo if you really wish. And I think having images rather than words is nice if you want to go down the mentalism route, because they really can picture it and you don't have to do any letter guessing or anything like that that's common with other book tests. It's incredibly well produced. The method is simple and elegant. It is a very, very easy to do, incredibly fooling book test. It is Evolutionary by Green Lemon, Marc Woods, $49.99.
I think I ought to see a doctor. Oh, why do you say that? I'm beginning to like the show.
And that's it for this week. I'm afraid next week is going to be the Easter weekend. But don't worry, there will still be a Monster Magic Saturday show. But until then, grab some magic, go out and have some fun with what is probably the best hobby in the world. Bye-bye.